Animal Crossing. There's something wonderfully poignant about those two words in conjunction with one another. To the unfamiliar, such a pairing of words may seem entirely random and meaningless, but to those lucky enough to understand the message behind them, they know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that the original Animal Crossing for the Nintendo GameCube was magic. To sum up my experiences with Animal Crossing in a few words would be difficult. There are just far too many wonderful memories to recount, but it's safe to say that it had a pretty significant impact on my gaming history. Indeed, Animal Crossing arrived on the scene all the way back in September of 2002, and I was floored. I'd been anticipating the game ever since its original trailer debuted at that year's E3, and it's the funniest thing considering I'd never been a big fan of life simulation games, but the instant that intro appeared alongside that iconic locomotive, and the music started playing that so superbly captured that Animal Crossing vibe, I was hooked. I knew I had to have it, and the rest of the trailer only solidified that feeling for me. Not only that, but I was kept excited for the game by the steady stream of information that followed, finding coverage on the Crossing Guardian website and through articles in Nintendo Power. No lie, I would read this one article that detailed the writer's time covering a month's worth of experiences in Animal Crossing over and over and over again, just to get a taste of the game prior to its release. He'd cover each new day as if he were filling out a journal, talking about all the various interactions he'd have with his villagers each day, the trips he'd take to his friends' towns, the events he'd participate in, etc. Seeing just how each day brought something new and exciting to his experience had me all sorts of awestruck, and I'd end up reading the same several pages for months until the game finally released. I can still remember with vivid detail my first moments with the game. It was after school and I just returned home from Toys R Us, a place from which I'd purchased many of my most memorable games, coincidentally enough. And as soon as I'd started the game up for the first time and listened to that iconic Nintendo, followed by the train's whistle, I was immediately captivated, transported to what would become my new home of Twenton, where I would spend many a happy afternoon interacting with my neighbors and earning bells, Animal Crossing's form of currency, to pay off my mortgage and purchase more furniture for my humble abode. Before I knew it, the day was nearing sundown, and the game reflected that. I was absolutely blown away. This was unheard of, aside from one other game I'd experienced prior, albeit on a much more limited scale, that being Pokemon Gold and Silver version for the Game Boy Color. It gave me the impression that I was really a part of a living, breathing world, and I suddenly found myself caring a significant amount more about having to let the game go for the day. It was like that depiction of nightfall approaching reinforced the desire to keep playing. I didn't want to say goodbye, but I understood that the end of the day had arrived, and so too did my gaming experience for the time being. And because of that, I found myself all the more excited to visit again the following day. And so I did. For just how long, I couldn't tell you. Animal Crossing was a daily part of my life for well over a year, maybe even 2. It may very well be the one game I played every single day for a year straight. It just kept me coming back for more, and I loved that authentic feeling of progression. But that likely wouldn't have been the case were it not for the colorful cast of characters I'd come to know and love. Tangy, the peppy as all get out cat with the orange for a head, Gaston, the surly but lovable mustachioed rabbit, Frigga, the village's resident snooty princess penguin, who would often compete with Monique the cat over who was the more beautiful of the two, Rio, the ostrich girl with the star tattoo, and Puddles, my personal favorite villager who would later break my heart by moving away. They welcomed me into their town with open arms and taught me how to earn a living, be it through doing favors for them, fishing or catching bugs and selling them to Tom Nook, etc. It's kind of hilarious now as an adult to think of something as seemingly dull as running errands for your neighbors or paying off your mortgage as fun or exciting, but it really was. There's something about how Nintendo managed to put a creative and entertaining spin on these typically menial things that really deserves to be applauded. But maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with the stories and good times had between friends. I recall fondly back to the times where several of my closest friends and I would all get together and play our favorite games, Animal Crossing being chief among them. We'd have a blast discovering strategies for fishing, talking about our favorite animal villagers, and visiting each other's towns, leaving hidden messages for each other to discover. It was this consistent participation and circulation of stories and ideas that made the game all the more fun, even when it came to something as seemingly boring as picking weeds. I kid you not, one of my fondest gaming memories as an adolescent comes from one night where my aforementioned friends and I stayed up all night playing Animal Crossing. Our all-nighter mission? Rid our towns of every single weed. And although we later realized this was a huge waste of time considering you could simply request the aid of a ghost named Wisp to help get rid of the weeds for you, it didn't matter. That wasn't the point. The point was simply to have fun together, laughing and joking about how the diabolical weed menace was nearly at its end, and sharing in our exhaustion at picking a seemingly endless supply of them. It was the subject of much amusement for a long time to come, and to this day remains something we'll laugh about whenever we discuss the game. But even without friends outside of the game to help enhance the experience, Animal Crossing was still something that meant a whole lot to me. It made me engage with the town and setting in a way I seldom ever had before in a video game. I'd even go so far as to wake up way earlier than usual to collect mushrooms or simply see what my villagers were up to. The world of Animal Crossing fascinated and excited me, and for Nintendo to have done this for so many years now is kind of mind-blowing. I'd race home from school to take part in the fall sports fair, where I'd cheer on my animal villagers as they engaged in a thrilling tug of war. I'd spend weekends fishing with my villagers in a contest to see who could land the biggest haul, and of course I'd enjoy celebrating my favorite real-world holidays too. But it's amazing to think that Nintendo was able to make even the small holidays feel just as memorable and important as the bigger ones. Indeed, just spending that time with your villagers was reason enough to get excited. It wasn't necessarily always about what you were celebrating, but rather the simple fact that you were celebrating it with the characters you cared about. There were moments that genuinely surprised me, whether it was Tortimer's April Fool's NES prank, or being given the responsibility of manning the lighthouse. I seriously can't tell you how excited I was to be able to enter that thing for the first time. Having played the game for over a year, the lighthouse always stood out to me as one of the town's staple landmarks. But unlike the others, this landmark remained mysterious and closed off to the player. But then I was suddenly granted access inside, and although it may seem utterly simple and unimportant, it was a huge moment for me. Entering that dim, mysterious lighthouse for the first time, flipping the switch and watching the gears come to life, you'd think that wouldn't really mean anything, but it did. As a result of being left in the dark for so long, this sudden and surprising accessibility meant all the more to me. It's really hard to describe just how the game achieved this constant feeling of excitement and anticipation over the simplest of things. Perhaps one day I'll really explore it, but for now I'm content to simply bask in my fond memories of a game that to this day has meant more to me than so many others. A game that doesn't try to be anything but itself. A game that I can relax to and simply enjoy being a part of. A game I can visit whenever I so choose and remember what it's like to be home. Home in the quaint, peaceful world of Animal Crossing. And that is feeling nostalgic. Thanks for watching.